Earlier this year, after a long and brave battle with dementia, I lost my grandfather. Dan Spillane was such a mysterious titan of a man that he almost warrants his own set of stories, but there is one in particular that replays often in my mind. When I was young, my father would take me up the hills and deep into the Irish countryside. Up where the roads married the trees, past the glades that seemed in perpetual twilight, and higher again to a rounded hilltop which overlooks a glorious verdant valley below, which would land us at the house where my father grew up in. Dan Spillane was an active man for his entire life. His father, my great-grandfather, fought in the Great War under a star-spangled banner, likely with the intentions to emigrate to America, but found himself needing the quiet of County Kerry after all he had seen as a dispatch rider in France with the Fighting 69th. In his formative years, Dan found it difficult to communicate with his father, likely due to what was then called shell shock, now post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Rather than stay indoors in the farmhouse and spend all day bickering over God knows what, possibly who ate the last packet of biscuits, knowing my blood, Dan spent his days making himself busy on the farm. The hill was awful land bought by my grandfather with his wartime salary, infertile and ungainly. By the time my father was born, Dan had resurrected the life of the land itself on top of that hill, and earned the recognition of the entire local community. The point that I'm making is that my grandfather was, as I choose to remember him before the dementia took hold, a relentless man who seemed to never grow weary or take a break, which I readily admit is a worldview that I find admirable, yet difficult to understand. My generation knows comforts that he could not fathom, but more than that, he was tough and spent his life working that land. So it was one summer spry day that my father, a glazier by trade, came to fix a window in the farmhouse, and I was spending all day with my grandfather. Most memorably, we loaded into his Jeep things I can no longer recall, chicken wire and fence posts and other miscellany, and we set off for the fields with the herding dog in the back seat to bring the cows into the milking parlour. On the way down the bumpy hilltop roads, the Jeep stopped twice. The first time, "I must check something there, Sean, stay in the Jeep a minute." That's all he told me. I was happy to do as I was told, and my mind began to wander. But after only a minute or so, he returned, sat in the Jeep, and we moved on. Went down the road again, passed the bend, stopped again. "One second, Sean, I must check something here too." When he returned, instead of the door of the driver's side, he opened the hatch at the rear of the Jeep, and in his hand he held a dead hare, and explained that the trap got him. As my grandfather, who kept taxidermy of some of his hunts, sunk in a knife he produced from somewhere in the back and began to skin the hare before my eyes, he spoke, "Don't worry, Sean, it's fine if you do it during the day." I don't judge him for ridding his farm of what was, to a man who cultivated terrible land into something enviable by farmers worldwide, a pest. Even then, despite my horror at seeing the insides of this poor animal being pulled outside, I could comprehend it, queasy as it felt to watch. At the time, the meaning of his words were lost on me. Knowing what I know now, they're all I can focus on. Welcome back to the bonfire. In February of 2025, members of the Lynch family near Castleisland in County Kerry began noticing strange visitors encroaching upon their farmland. After speaking with them a few months ago and hearing their story, I decided it was time to hit the books and put a capstone on this old memory from my childhood. Hares and rabbits are often associated with luck, so that was where my research mostly began. While both have their places in the folklore, rabbits and hares do have distinct connotations in the Irish pagan mythology, which is where you see animals come up the most. Interestingly, it is more often seen as bad luck to consume a hare rather than the animal prescribing good fortune outright. To see one is to know that good fortune exists, but that does not inherently mean that it would fall onto the observer of this animal. In one early myth, Oisin of the Fianna encounters a hare and manages to wound it. He follows it through the brush, hedgerow, and mists until he finds a door in the hillside through which a trail of blood leads. Passing through, he encounters a young woman bleeding from her leg, who explains that not only is she a member of the Sidhe, the denizens of the other world, but also that hares are the preferred form of Sidhe women when they leave the other world and step into ours. From that day forward, because of the experience, Oisin swore again to never eat a hare. Thus, the superstition begins. A story recorded in County Cork recalls the tale of two huntsmen and their hounds chasing and killing a hare in the graveyard, or a local graveyard. When the huntsman took the hare from his hound's mouth, it soon after began to swell and then wither until it rotted off completely. The dog remained unharmed, but the man died soon after. A common saying in Cork and Kerry, and one that I often heard growing up, was that if you are out late, especially at night, and you see a hare, you turn around and do not look back, for it presages death or grief. The cry of a hare is also horrifying, especially a pain cry, and like the fox, it has often been given as a possible suggested explanation for the famous wail of the banshee. One commonality between all of these stories is the time they tend to occur. Not a single one occurs during broad daylight. The hare is an inherently liminal creature encountered by mankind most often at dusk or dawn due to their nocturnal nature. And to harm one when it is simply minding its own business and you should be asleep is to invite a sort of negative karma. However, the hare also represents fortune. The hare is an incredibly agile, bounding creature racing forward. A prey animal, careful but fast, wary but adventurous, brings the hare towards positive connotations. It is all of the risk and the reward and the thrill of the concept of discovery itself. For many, however, the hare represents something different. The twilight it exists in ties in deeply with the Samhain, the veils between worlds, the other world. And this brings us back to the Lynch family, who lost a family member this year. I offer them both my condolences for what has happened to them and my thanks for taking the time to share their story with me. Shortly before the passing of a loved one, the family began to run into hares at an unusual rate and outside of their typical season. Not only that, but for a notoriously flighty prey animal, they had an uncanny fearlessness. While they were unaware their loved one was dying at the time, the feeling these encounters created is impossible to disregard. This is what they had to say.
February. And sometime in February they started appearing.
Yeah, and she didn't die till when? 20th of April.
20th of April, she died.
Yeah.
Maybe 6-7 weeks before it. We've seen the hares all out. We've seen an awful lot of hares. And even before that, it said there was one there's beyond about in the house below. I was been looking in the windows and stuff.
Yeah, but that would be passing here as well. But they'd be coming down from the mountain as well. Like they live out the mountain, so they would be going through the yard as well. You know.
Yeah, and all
that would be kind of a natural thing.
We would only have one at a time.
Yeah.
But we were seeing, like I met 2 sets of pairs at least going down the road a few nights.
But we wouldn't be meeting them down the Waterheen at all. Like the road going down there, we call it the Waterheen, you know. You would have had a very rare would meet here.
And you would only meet
maybe a rabbit or something. But we would have any time I got to town, I was got to town at night, I'd meet him going or maybe coming, you know, maybe both times. And he'd be in the road in front of us and he'd run away, then he'd go away.
They were not like normal at all. They were very quiet. They were no fear no. Like usually if we come across a hare, they're gone as fast, but these ones there was no fear.
They were hanging around like.
And they were like they'd no fear of you. They'd move out of the way, but there'd be no panic, you know.
But these were waiting for you to come on and like.
They seemed to wanting to watch you.
Yeah. And then they'd run then in front of the car like.
But there'd be no panic, like there'd be no.
No. You would have to slow down and stuff and take our time, yeah. There wouldn't something that'd fly out.
They'd daft out the way. Yeah. What is more
I suppose we were all noticing, but we weren't talking about it at all. You know, because we wouldn't take that much notice, like, you know. Until everyone started seeing them, like, morning or night. You were looking at them, you know. And they'd be hanging around. They'd be even hanging around the sheds over there. You'd never see them around sheds, like, you know. The shed over the yard there, now we would give, look out the window there, that would be over there, like, you know. You know, for upstairs now, looking out the window, you could see him passing.
Yeah, there's always a hare up the mountain there. You'd always come across one, like that. And he'd move out, he'd be gone. There tends to be no panic, you know. There's a lot of them, like coming across 2 pairs within 100 yards. Well, the top of the road and halfway down there, we've never seen 2 pairs around like that. And yeah, but as they're looking into the window, they creep out a bit.
After all this time, I still cannot confidently say that I understand the hare in the cultural context of Ireland. An omen of fortune or ill favour, the calling card of the reaper, or the gift of discovery. I know what it meant to my grandfather now, though. It was something to be respected. Taxidermy likely seems brutish to many in this day and age when it has fallen out of favor, but there is a form of respect in it. Seasoned hunters often advise younger ones to use the whole animal, waste nothing taken from nature. I think my grandfather was a man who did what needed to be done, but kept a respect for the world around him. In the context of who he was and what he did, that's certainly something I can rationalize. He spent his whole life nursing one plot of land and making something out of it that was not there before he was there. The Hare remaining a mystery seems oddly fitting for a creature torn between two worlds, beholden not to dark nor belonging to the light. Perhaps respecting the Hare means understanding that you may never hold dominion over that which it is. Thank you for sharing the fireside with me once again. Last week's episode has received a lot more attention than I expected, an inaugural episode too. For those of you still here with me, I would appreciate sharing the video with any friends or family who may be interested in these tales unbound. I also have an email address set up specifically for getting in contact with me directly. If you have any ghost stories or interesting mythological anecdotes from Ireland and are willing to share, possibly even make it on the show, don't be shy to get in contact. The email address is on the screen now for video watchers, and for audio listeners, it is seansPillanefilms@gmail.com. That is seanspillane@gmail.com. Until next time, take care. Try not to panic if you see a hare at dusk or dawn. Just turn around and leave the creature to his business. In return, it might just leave you to yours.